Imagine working every day, giving your heart and soul to a job, only to be humiliated because of the color of your skin. That's the reality for Nia, a young woman whose life takes a shocking turn the moment she steps into the mansion of Alex, a wealthy billionaire. She thought it was just another job, but she was wrong. From whispers in the hallways to cruel public pranks orchestrated by Charlotte, a family member who delights in her misery, Nia faces relentless racism and humiliation. Every day is a test of courage, every glance a reminder that society doesn't see her as equal. And yet, in the midst of cruelty, one person notices. One person stands for her, risking everything to protect her dignity. This isn't just a story about hardship. It's about strength, defiance, and an unexpected love that blossoms in the shadows of prejudice. Can Nia survive the storm of hate and emerge victorious? And will the connection she shares with Alex defy the odds stacked against them? Watch till the end to see how courage and love can triumph over prejudice. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because this is a story that everyone needs to hear. The first time Nia stepped into the grand halls of Alex's mansion, she knew her life had changed, but not in the way she imagined. Every step she took echoed beneath the crystal chandeliers, a constant reminder that she was different. She wasn't just a maid in this house, she was the target. Whispers followed her, eyes watched her. And Charlotte made it her mission to humiliate Nia at every opportunity, making her feel small, invisible, and undeserving of even the air she breathed. It wasn't just the cold stares or the snide remarks. Charlotte's words cut deep, each one like a blade, a reminder that no matter how hard Nia worked, no matter how quietly she moved, the color of her skin made her a target. Yet, amidst the endless tension, Nia couldn't help but notice Alex, calm, composed, untouchable, yet somehow different. Unlike the rest of his family, he didn't look down at her. He noticed when she excelled. He noticed when she suffered, and then, one day something happened that changed everything, a confrontation. Charlotte's cruelty went too far, and Nia found herself cornered, humiliated in front of the household staff and guests. Heart pounding, tears threatening to spill, she braced herself for the worst. But before Charlotte could deliver her final blow, Alex stepped in. The room fell silent. His gaze, sharp yet protective, cut through the tension like fire. "Enough," he said, his voice low but unshakable. That single word wasn't just protection, it was a warning. And in that moment, Nia realized something she hadn't allowed herself to feel before. Someone on her side. Someone who would fight for her, even against his own family. But the world outside Alex's walls didn't disappear. The scandal, the judgment, the whispers of forbidden connections, everything was still waiting. Nia knew her feelings were dangerous. For him, for her, for everyone around them. And yet, every glance, every shared moment, ignited something she couldn't control. How far would Alex go to protect Nia from the cruelty of those who were supposed to love him? Could a maid and a billionaire really find love in a world so determined to keep them apart? And when the stakes rise higher than either of them imagined, will their connection survive or crumble under the weight of prejudice, power, and desire? Nia's story isn't just about work, wealth, or walls built from privilege. It's about courage, defiance, and a love that refuses to be silenced. And the question that hangs in the air is simple, yet terrifying. Can love truly conquer all, even when the world is against you? Nia had always believed in the quiet strength of routine. Every morning, she woke before the sun, the soft hum of the city still lingering in the streets outside her small apartment. She lived modestly, but with pride. Her family had taught her that dignity wasn't measured by wealth, but by how you carried yourself, even when the world tried to knock you down. By day, she worked as a maid in one of the city's most lavish homes. By night, she returned to her modest apartment, curled up with a book, or humming along to old jazz records that reminded her of simpler times. Nia's life wasn't glamorous, but it was hers, filled with small joys. The warmth of her mother's phone calls, the laughter of children in the street below, the quiet satisfaction of a polished floor, or a perfectly folded stack of laundry. And then there was Alex, the billionaire owner of the mansion she worked in. He was a man whose presence filled every room without even trying. Tall, impeccably dressed, commanding attention, but not in the way his family did. There was a calmness about him, an awareness that somehow set him apart from the entitlement and arrogance that permeated the walls of the household. Nia noticed him, of course. Everyone did. But she didn't expect her life to intertwine with his. Not like this. At first, the house seemed like any other workplace. Orders to follow, routines to memorize, faces to recognize. But there was an undercurrent, a tension that Nia couldn't ignore. The family members, particularly Charlotte, the eldest daughter, had a way of looking at her that made her skin crawl. A glance here, a whispered comment there, each one wrapped in politeness but edged with scorn. It was subtle at first, almost easy to dismiss. Maybe they were just cold, she thought. Maybe this was the way the wealthy treated their staff. But even in those early days, Nia felt it, a sting that had nothing to do with her work and everything to do with the color of her skin. When Charlotte laughed a little too loudly at a joke Nia didn't make, or when the other family members exchanged quiet glances as if sharing a secret she wasn't invited to hear, Nia felt the walls of the mansion closing in. Her instincts whispered that her life here would not remain simple for long. Yet, in the midst of tension, there were moments that made her heart hesitate. Small, fleeting instances of kindness. A nod from Alex as she passed. A quietly offered word of encouragement when no one else was watching. Those moments became her lifeline. A fragile thread connecting her to something she barely dared to hope for. Respect, recognition, maybe even protection. Little did she know that the same house that offered her opportunity and security would soon become a battlefield. A place where the subtle stings of prejudice would escalate into outright humiliation. Where the walls that held luxury and wealth would echo with cruelty. And where Nia would discover the strength she never knew she had. Because in this house, the world outside wouldn't just challenge her, it would try to break her. And when it did, Nia would be forced to confront a question that had haunted her since childhood. Could she stand tall, even when everyone around her tried to push her down? From the very first week, Nia sensed that working in Alex's mansion would be nothing like her previous jobs. The grandeur of the house, the marble floors, towering bookshelves and chandeliers that seemed to capture the sunlight, was mesmerizing. But beneath its shimmering surface lay a harsh reality. A world where appearances mattered more than humanity, and where cruelty often hid behind smiles. Charlotte wasted no time in making her disdain clear. It started with small jabs, a deliberately condescending tone when giving instructions, a fake smile as she commented on Nia's unpolished way of folding laundry, or the subtle way she would question Nia's intelligence in front of the staff. But these minor slights were only the beginning. One afternoon, while Nia was dusting the living room, Charlotte's laughter erupted behind her. "Are you sure you even know which way the duster goes?" she mocked, loud enough for the other staff to hear. Nia's cheeks burned, but she kept silent, gripping the duster tightly. She had learned long ago that silence was safer than arguing in these walls. Yet even as she forced herself to stay calm, a simmering frustration grew within her, a fire that would not be easily quenched. The incidents escalated quickly. At the formal family dinner, Nia accidentally dropped a tray of silverware. Charlotte's voice cut through the room like glass. "Oh, how clumsy can one person be?" She laughed, and a few of the guests joined in, their eyes flicking to Nia as if she were some sideshow amusement. Nia felt herself shrink under the weight of their stares, humiliated. She looked toward Alex, hoping for a glance of understanding, but he was absorbed in conversation. Oblivious. Or so she thought. Later that evening, Nia cleaned in near silence, her hands trembling. She couldn't stop replaying Charlotte's mocking laughter. But then Alex approached quietly, his eyes meeting hers. "Ignore her," he said softly, almost a whisper. "She doesn't define you. Not here. Not ever." For the first time, Nia felt a flicker of relief, but it was quickly extinguished by the certainty that Charlotte would not relent. Then came the incident in the mansion's grand hall, a day Nia would never forget. Charlotte had convinced Alex's younger cousins to play a cruel prank on her during a family gathering. They surrounded Nia as she carried a tray of drinks, giggling in mock innocence. Before she could react, the drinks were deliberately spilled, soaking her uniform and cascading down the polished marble floor. Gasps and laughter echoed around her, a cruel symphony of humiliation. Nia's heart pounded. The room spun around her. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. It was then that Alex intervened, his presence like a shield. "Enough!" he barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. The laughter died instantly. Charlotte froze, caught off guard. Alex's eyes burned with a fury Nia had never seen before. "Do you think this is acceptable? Do you think treating someone like this shows anything but your own weakness?" The words rang like thunder, silencing the hall. Nia felt a strange mixture of relief and awe. For the first time, someone in this house had truly defended her. But relief was fleeting. Outside the mansion, society offered no sanctuary. Nia began noticing how even her small victories were overshadowed by prejudice. Neighbors whispered as she walked by. Co-workers in previous jobs hinted at her ambition in ways that felt condescending. Strangers assumed she was there to serve, not to belong. Every step forward seemed to come with a weight pushing her back. At work, Charlotte escalated further. She deliberately assigned Nia impossible tasks, polishing windows during a rainstorm, ironing dozens of garments in record time, attending to impossible schedules that would make anyone falter. Each failure, or even the perception of it, became a weapon to belittle Nia publicly. And yet, Alex quietly observed, often arriving at the precise moment to prevent disasters or cover for her. His interventions a lifeline she didn't dare rely on too heavily. After all, it could backfire if the family noticed their growing closeness. Then came the whispering campaign. Charlotte began planting rumors among the staff and even some guests that Nia was incompetent, that she was too ambitious, or overstepping her place. Nia felt the isolation creeping in. The mansion that had once seemed like an opportunity now felt like a battlefield. Friends were scarce, allies rarer still. She learned to navigate a world where every glance could carry judgment. Every word could be twisted into mockery. One evening, while arranging flowers in the grand hall, Nia overheard Charlotte speaking to one of the staff in a tone dripping with malice. "Mark my words, that girl will never belong here. She'll break herself trying, and we'll all enjoy watching it." Nia's fingers froze on the stems. Her chest tightened. The words hung in the air like a threat, chilling and precise. That was the moment she realized that the struggle would not just be against tasks or expectations, but against an entrenched mindset. One that refused to see her as human, let alone equal. Yet, through it all, Alex remained a quiet, unwavering presence. He didn't just defend her physically. He challenged her doubts, whispered encouragements, subtle gestures of trust. Each interaction, each protective act, began to erode Nia's fear, replacing it with a cautious hope. But she knew the mansion was still a powder keg, and at any moment, the tension could explode in ways that could ruin her. And it did, though not yet. The rising tension had reached a tipping point. Nia's determination began to shine through, her dignity refusing to be crushed. But Charlotte, cunning and relentless, was already planning her next move, a public act of cruelty designed to humiliate Nia beyond recovery. One misstep, one small mistake, could shatter everything Nia had fought to hold together. Would Alex intervene again? Could Nia withstand the storm about to hit? Or would the walls of privilege and prejudice finally collapse on her, leaving nothing but despair? The mansion, for all its beauty, had become a cage, and Nia was trapped in the eye of a storm she couldn't yet control. The air in the mansion was thick that evening, heavy with anticipation and unspoken hostility. Nia had spent the day moving through endless tasks, every chore shadowed by Charlotte's malicious glances. The family had gathered for one of their grand dinner parties, a spectacle of wealth, power, and social pretense, and Nia had been assigned to oversee the entire service. From the start, Charlotte made it clear tonight Nia was to fail. She whispered instructions to the younger staff, carefully orchestrating mishaps, dishes slightly out of place, wine glasses that accidentally got chipped, food timed to arrive late. Each move was calculated, meant to humiliate Nia in front of the city's most influential guests. Nia moved through the ballroom like a ghost, her hands steady, but her heart hammering. She had been preparing for moments like this her entire life. Countless hours of hard work, countless acts of patience, the quiet endurance of being judged not for her skill, but for her skin. Every fiber of her being screamed for her to break, to shrink, to apologize for existing in a world that didn't want her there. But something inside her, a spark Alex had unknowingly fanned through subtle gestures of trust and protection, refused to surrender. It started subtly. A tray slipped. Charlotte's eyes gleamed with cruel satisfaction as she whispered to one of the guests, "I told you she wasn't ready." Nia's chest tightened, her face flushed with heat. But instead of crumbling, she paused, inhaled deeply, and corrected the spill with grace, her movements calm, precise, and deliberate. She looked at Charlotte, a silent warning flashing in her eyes. She was not defeated. Then came the moment that would define everything. Charlotte, realizing her subtle tactics were failing, escalated her cruelty. She deliberately knocked over a chair in front of a table of high-profile guests, a move that would make it seem as if Nia had caused chaos. Laughter erupted immediately, mocking and sharp, cutting through the room. Gasps and whispers followed. Nia's hands trembled as she steadied the chair. But this time, she didn't just react, she confronted. "You will not blame me for your actions," she said, her voice steady, cutting through the din of mocking laughter. Every eye in the room shifted to her, some shocked, some curious. Charlotte froze, lips parting in surprise, her control slipping for the first time that evening. It was then that Alex stepped forward. He had watched silently until now, allowing Nia to find her strength, but the line had been crossed. His tall frame moved between Nia and Charlotte, eyes burning with an intensity that silenced everyone. "I will not tolerate this behavior in my house," he said, voice calm but deadly. "Nia is not your entertainment, your target, or your joke. She is a human being, and if anyone here cannot respect that, they are free to leave." For a moment, the room held its breath. Charlotte's smirk faltered. Some of the guests shifted uncomfortably, realizing the tension they had been part of. But Charlotte wasn't finished. She stepped forward, her voice dripping with venom. "And who are you to decide what's acceptable? She's just a maid. She doesn't belong here." Alex's eyes narrowed. "She belongs wherever she chooses. And if you cannot accept that, then perhaps you've been blind to decency your entire life." The confrontation escalated. Charlotte lunged forward, attempting a subtle shove, an attempt to regain dominance. But Alex was faster. He gently but firmly held her arm, preventing further escalation. Nia, for the first time, felt a surge of courage she hadn't dared to acknowledge before. The humiliation she had endured for months, the whispered insults, the sabotaged work, the public mockery, boiled inside her. This was her moment. She stepped forward, standing taller than she ever had, and faced Charlotte. "I have worked in this house, in this life, and in this world with more dignity than you will ever understand. Your cruelty does not define me. Your prejudice does not control me. I am not invisible, and I will not be silenced." The words echoed like thunder. A hush fell over the room. Even some of Charlotte's allies faltered, uncertain for the first time. Nia's voice, once soft and trembling under the weight of daily attacks, now rang clear and unshakable. Every insult, every act of bullying she had endured had built her into this moment, not broken her. Charlotte's face twisted in rage, but before she could speak again, Alex placed a hand on Nia's shoulder. The gesture was subtle, protective, intimate. It spoke volumes. He was not just defending her in the moment. He had been watching her, believing in her, recognizing her strength long before the world would. Nia felt a warmth spread through her chest, a realization that perhaps the bond between them went beyond gratitude, beyond respect. Something deeper, something unspoken, had begun to grow, but the tension wasn't over. Charlotte, humiliated and enraged, retreated to regroup, whispering threats to anyone who would listen. Nia's victory was only partial. The storm had not yet passed, yet the turning point had occurred. The house, the family, the guests, they all now saw Nia in a new light. She was no longer simply a maid, a target, or a shadow. She was a force to be reckoned with. Alex, sensing the lingering danger, took her hand and led her away from the ballroom, into the quieter sanctuary of his private study. The moment was electric, filled with adrenaline, relief, and a new awareness of what had been stirred between them. Nia's heart pounded not just from fear or triumph, but from the undeniable recognition that she had stood tall against cruelty, and that someone she cared for deeply had seen her strength, acknowledged it, and supported it without question. They paused in silence, the storm of the mansion fading just enough to hear each other's breaths. "You were incredible," Alex said softly, his hand still resting on hers. "I've never seen anyone stand like that. Not just defend themselves, but demand respect." Nia swallowed, eyes glistening. I didn't know if I could, but I couldn't let her win. I couldn't let them define me." Alex's gaze held hers, unwavering. "You won tonight, but this isn't the end. There's more to fight, more the world will throw at you, and I'll be here." And just as the words settled, a soft knock at the door sent a shiver through her. Nia's instincts screamed. Charlotte had returned, more determined than ever, bringing with her whispers, rumors, and perhaps even allies ready to undo the night's triumph. The mansion that had felt like a battlefield for months was far from quiet. But for the first time, Nia felt something powerful, a mix of fear, determination, and exhilaration. She was no longer merely surviving. She was beginning to claim her place, her dignity, her life. And whatever Charlotte or the world threw at her next, she was ready to face it head on. Because sometimes the fiercest battles forge the strongest hearts. And in that moment, Nia's heart had never been stronger. The days after the climactic confrontation were quiet, but the tension in the mansion lingered like a low hum, vibrating through the marble floors and echoing off the crystal chandeliers. Nia moved with a newfound confidence, carrying herself with the dignity that had always been there, now visible to everyone. The household staff noticed the change immediately. Where before she had walked cautiously, bracing for ridicule, she now moved deliberately, calmly, unafraid of whispered judgments or stares of disapproval. Charlotte, once so sure of her power, now skirted Nia's presence with forced civility, aware that her previous tactics had failed spectacularly. The other family members, those who had once whispered and laughed at Nia's supposed incompetence, began to reconsider their assumptions. Slowly, subtly, respect replaced disdain, though grudgingly in some cases. Nia's courage had done more than defend her in a single evening. It had started to shift the household's very culture. Alex, ever the calm force, continued to support Nia quietly, never flaunting his influence, but always ensuring she had the protection, recognition, and space she deserved. In those private moments, away from the judging eyes of the mansion, their connection deepened. They shared conversations that were no longer merely professional. They laughed, debated, and revealed vulnerabilities, discovering a mutual respect and attraction that had been simmering beneath the surface. What began as admiration had evolved into something tender, a bond forged through shared trials and the recognition of each other's humanity. Outside the mansion, Nia began to notice a shift in herself as well. The world that had seemed so hostile, the streets, the neighbors, the whispers of society, no longer held the same power over her. Each act of prejudice she encountered became a reminder of the strength she had cultivated and of the allies she had found. Courage, she realized, was not about the absence of fear. It was about facing it, head on, without letting it define her. Charlotte, however, would not fade quietly. Determined to regain control, she escalated her schemes, attempting to create tension between Alex and Nia by planting rumors and manipulating situations to suggest impropriety. But each attempt faltered. Alex's unwavering belief in Nia's integrity, coupled with Nia's poise and calm, made it impossible for Charlotte to succeed. The mansion staff, many of whom had witnessed Charlotte's cruelty, quietly supported Nia, creating a network of subtle resistance that Charlotte could not penetrate. One evening, during a particularly lavish gathering of business associates and socialites, Charlotte attempted her most audacious act yet, a public accusation framed as concern for propriety, insinuating that Nia had overstepped boundaries with Alex. The room fell into a tense hush. Guests murmured, glances flicking between Nia and Alex, waiting for a reaction. But Nia did not falter. "I am here to serve with integrity, honesty, and dedication," Nia said, her voice steady, carrying over the chatter. My work is my responsibility, and I answer only to those who treat me with respect. Nothing more, nothing less. Alex, standing beside her, added with quiet authority, Nia's presence here is a testament to her skill and character. Any attempt to undermine her is a reflection of your own cruelty, Charlotte, not hers. The impact was immediate. Gasps, murmurs of agreement, and uncomfortable shuffles rippled through the room. Charlotte's face paled, her authority crumbling. Nia had faced the ultimate test, not just of endurance but of integrity, and had emerged victorious. In the weeks that followed, the household began to transform. The staff, inspired by Nia's courage, found their own voices, no longer silenced by fear of ridicule or dismissal. Charlotte, increasingly isolated, retreated into her bitterness, her influence waning as the family and staff collectively recognized the corrosive nature of her prejudice. Nia's presence had become a stabilizing, empowering force, a symbol of dignity, resilience, and the quiet strength that defies oppression. Beyond the mansion, Nia and Alex's bond continued to grow, moving from mutual respect to undeniable love. Their relationship, forged in the crucible of adversity, was deeper than romance. It was a connection built on trust, understanding, and shared courage. They began to envision a future together, one in which social barriers and prejudice could be challenged, not just within the walls of a mansion, but in the broader world. The mansion itself seemed to breathe differently in the aftermath. Where once whispers of judgment and scorn had lingered, there was now laughter, genuine camaraderie, and a new awareness of what respect truly meant. Alex's family, forced to confront their own biases and the consequences of cruelty, slowly began to change, recognizing that prejudice only isolates, divides, and weakens even those who believe themselves powerful. Nia, for her part, became more than a maid. She became a teacher in quiet ways, demonstrating through action how courage and integrity could reshape relationships and challenge systemic injustice. Her story spread quietly among the social circles connected to the mansion, an example of how one person's refusal to be silenced could ripple outward, changing lives far beyond the immediate household. Yet the story was not only about triumph. It was also about the scars that prejudice leaves behind. Nia carried the memory of every insult, every act of cruelty, every whispered assumption that she did not belong. But instead of letting these memories harden her heart, she used them to fuel her resolve, to live with dignity, to fight injustice wherever it appeared, and to never let hate dictate her self-worth. Alex and Nia's relationship eventually became a beacon of unity and hope. Their love, once whispered in private corners, blossomed openly, a quiet rebellion against a world that had once tried to define them by race, wealth, and status. Together, they began philanthropic efforts focused on education, mentorship, and advocacy, ensuring that others who faced systemic discrimination could find support, opportunity, and encouragement. Their bond demonstrated that love built on respect and courage is stronger than prejudice, cruelty, or societal expectation. The morale of Nia's journey became clear to all who witnessed it. Racism destroys families from within, prejudice isolates communities, and cruelty corrodes even the most powerful. But courage, dignity, and love, unyielding and fearless, can break cycles of hate, inspire change, and heal wounds that prejudice leaves behind. Nia's story, Alex's steadfast support, and the ultimate triumph of integrity over bias were proof that unity brings healing, that compassion strengthens bonds, and that even the harshest opposition cannot suppress truth and justice. In the quiet moments, away from the grandeur of the mansion and the lingering echoes of conflict, Nia reflected on her journey. She had faced humiliation, isolation, and the harsh realities of systemic prejudice. She had stood alone in the face of cruelty. And yet, with courage and the support of one who truly saw her, she had emerged stronger, unbroken, and victorious. Alex, holding her hand, smiled. "You taught everyone what true strength looks like," he said. "And you reminded me of something even more important, that no one should ever have to stand alone against hate." Nia nodded, a soft smile touching her lips. "And I learned that even in the darkest places, people can rise. Together." As the mansion settled into a new rhythm, free from the shadow of prejudice, Naya and Alex's story became more than a personal triumph. It became a lesson, a warning, and an inspiration. A testament to the power of courage, the necessity of standing against injustice, and the profound truth that love, respect, and integrity are forces stronger than any hate. And in the hearts of all who witnessed their journey, one lesson echoed loud and clear: prejudice may try to define you, but courage, love, and unity will always prevail.